Welcome friends, welcome back to the kitchen. So a couple of weeks ago on the channel we made a sheet pan pumpkin pie or slab pumpkin pie or pumpkin pie bars, whatever you want to call them. And the recipe for the dough or the pie dough we're going to call it, press-in pie dough, made enough for 2 of these 9x13 sheet pans. So I stuck one of them in the freezer for a future date, and today is that future date. So I'm going to take it right out of the freezer. The oven is preheated to 350, and we're going to stick it in the oven, and it's going to blind bake for about 30 minutes or so, which will give us enough time to make the filling. And the filling starts out with 4 eggs, so I'll get them into our mixing jug. And the last egg. So today we're making a pecan slab pie, or pecan bars, or pecan sheet pie, whatever you want to call it. That's what we're making. So I've got the 4 eggs, and I'm just going to whisk them a little bit just to break them up. You don't have to go too hard on them. Next I'm going to add in white sugar, white granulated sugar. I'm going to add in some brown sugar. Get that in. And for everyone out there who is already tippity-tapping, fun fact for you. The brown sugar I'm using is actually brown sugar. It is not white sugar with molasses added back. Not all brown sugar is white sugar with molasses added back, contrary to what some people on the internet are trying to tell you. Now, the third sugar I'm going to use in this, it could be maple syrup. But I'm going to use sorghum. It could be corn syrup as well. If what you have is corn syrup, use corn syrup. But I have some sorghum. So I'm going to put the sorghum in. And this is pure sorghum from a small family-run sorghum mill. It's not cut with other sugars. I've found a lot of sorghums that I see are cut with other sugars. So I'm going to say just about that much. And we'll scrape that off and get all that goodness into the mixing bowl. Look at that. Sorghum. I really do like sorghum. I like sorghum almost as much as maple syrup. Not quite, but almost as much as maple syrup. Okay. And I only keep the sorghum in the fridge because that's just an easy place for me to store it. You don't have to keep it in the fridge. Don't tell me that you don't have to keep it in the fridge. I know that. I just keep it in the fridge for some reason. Next in, I've got some melted butter. I'm going to put in some vanilla. This is one of those recipes. Don't think too hard about it. You're just dumping stuff into a bowl and you're mixing it up. So I've got some cinnamon. I've got some ground clove, got some salt, and I've got a nutmeg, or probably about 1/4 of a nutmeg. Okay, and now we just mix that all together. Now the next ingredient is pecans. And there's a couple of schools of thought about the pecans. I'm using pecan halves. Some people like to use chopped up pecans so that there's just tiny little bits all the way through. I kind of like a bigger pecan half sometimes. Sometimes I'll actually chop up about half of them into really small, fine bits and then put in the larger pieces as well, just to kind of give a mix. Some people will sprinkle them onto the pie bottom first and then pour the filling over top. I like to mix them into the filling. That's just me. Just how I am. It's what I want to do. You could do it any way you like. And I'm filming this at the end of September 2022. If you're watching this in October or November of 2022 and you go to the grocery store and you are in absolute shock at what the cost of pecans are, and maybe it's just because I'm in the far north or north. Pecans are really expensive right now. So if you need to, if you want to, just use any other nut. This would be really good with almonds. This would be really good with walnuts if you like walnuts. I'm not a fan of those, but if you like them, use walnuts. Peanuts would be really good. sub in any nut you like, and if you aren't a big fan of nuts, sub in raisins. Raisins would go really well in this. Half raisins, half nuts. There are ways around the current unbelievable costs of things. Pull the pie shell out. And pour in the filling. Spread out the nuts. Back into the oven. Look at that.
Ooh, hey Glenn. Hey friends, so another sheet pie.
Slab pie, sheet pie.
Okay.
I don't know what to call it. There's so many different names for it. But this one is pecan.
That is not working out.
Forget the fork.
There we go.
That is a lot of pecans. I probably overdid the pecans.
It's interesting though, because I really like all the pecans. And because it's a thin layer on the sheet, it is like a square. Like you can, unlike, standard pie that kind of, you can pick it up and...
You can pick it up and chew on it and eat it. This is... And, I mean, there's a lot of sugar in it. It's only sugar. I mean, really, when it comes down to it, it's sugar and egg and a little bit of fat. But it's mostly sugar. It doesn't come across as being too sweet. But it is really sweet. So, as much as I could eat several pieces of this, I probably shouldn't. Okay. This is a great way.
My mouth is full.
This is a great way to serve a pie to a crowd where you just want to give everybody a little taste because you've got multiple desserts. Great to put on the sideboard. Super easy if you're afraid of making a pie because it's got that press-in crust. And if you freak out at the grocery store like I did over the cost of pecans, put in a different nut. That will be okay. I think that will be okay. So, thanks for stopping by. See you again soon. And so into this food processor, I have put flour, salt, white sugar. I'm going to put in some brown sugar, and I'm going to put in some butter. We're going to put the lid on, and we're going to pulse that. So this is the point, if I was making a roll-out pie dough, I'd be pouring in 2-3 tablespoons of ice cold water, maybe a quarter cup of ice cold water, and that would bring this together into a dough that you could roll out. Without that water, it stays sort of like loose sand. And it's something that we can press into our pan. Now, this is an untreated aluminum quarter sheet, 9x13. This is a 9x13. I think a lot of places call it a brownie pan, I believe is what I've seen this called. And this one is nonstick. I'm not going to use it because I want to serve this pie right out of the sheet pan. I just want to put the sheet pan out, cut it into squares, and let people take what they want. And so this makes enough for 2 of these sheet pans. So I'm going to put about half in this pan and half in this pan. And I will, I'll use one today for the recipe, and the other one I will freeze and use later. And so you just want to get in there with your hand and press it in and try to get it even across the bottom of the pan and up the sides. As someone who enjoys rolling pie dough, I almost find this harder. I almost find this harder to get it right and get it tamped in and get it all the way up the side. Anyway, it's probably easier as a starting point. So I'm going to put these both in the fridge at this point and cool them down. This one I will wrap up and freeze, and I'll come back to it in a few weeks and we'll do something else with it. This one we're going to bake off in a little while, but needs about a half hour in the fridge before we get there.